Ladies and gentlemen, your sweet Zionist prince, white colonizer, coming to you live from the great state of Texas right now. I'm in Texas speaking, and we're going to take a look at these clips from Joe Rogan and Douglas Murray and Dave Smith. It's been a big, prolonged episode, and we're going to react to it right now. Let's see what goes on here.
Why do you think there's a blockade of any kind?
Why is there a blockade? Well, I mean, the argument from Israel would be...
No, why do you think?
I would say, okay, I think that the disengagement, I think Smotrich was correct when he said that, I'm sorry, my mistake there. I think the, which another quote that I'm sure you're familiar with, but Dov Weisskopf, who was the senior advisor to Sharon, who was the prime minister at the time, he essentially said the reason we're doing the disengagement, the reason we're doing this is so that we can put the peace process in formaldehyde. This is the reason we're doing it.
You're not answering my question. You're
Yes,
continuing to cite
I'm getting
very
there.
right-wing Israeli politicians. But what do you think is the reason?
I'm getting there. I'm saying, so I think they disengaged in order to kill the peace process. I think they put the full blockade around the country for the reason that they've always kind of done it there, that, yeah, they don't want too much stuff getting in. They want to keep them, as they put it, on a diet, and they don't want rockets to fly into Israel.
They want to keep them on a diet? And they don't want too many rockets to fly into. All right, I'm gonna let this play through because I don't want you guys to get angry at me. But oh my god,
The second one is a kind of important one, isn't it? The final
Yeah,
one you said.
it is.
If the Palestinian leadership in Gaza after 2005 had not from the get-go decided to use Gaza as a stockpiling place for rockets to fire into Israel, all of it would be different. If they had just resisted the temptation that so many of us do in our lives to stop keeping RPGs in our cellars and then Katyusha rockets in our children's bedrooms, all of it could have been different. If that desire to live in peace beside your neighbors had superseded the desire to stockpile rockets, it would all be different.
Yeah, or if
And
Israel
what
just
you
hadn't
describe
occupied
as-
them for 60 years, it would all be different too.
They
I mean,
weren't
why is it the onus
occupying-
always
they
on
weren't
them?
Well, you believe in self-determination, I'm sure. Yes.
I believe in individual rights. Yeah, sure.
Okay, individual rights. And that includes the right to make bad decisions. Yes. The Palestinians in Gaza, when they voted in Hamas, made a very bad decision.
Yeah, of course,
and
Douglas.
In the
but
years,
but,
hang on,
yes.
hang on. And in the years after that, they made bad decision after bad decision. It was a very bad decision to continually fire thousands of rockets into Israel. It was a very bad decision to use what boats came in early on and to use the smuggling networks from Egypt, not to bring in supplies you could actually build a thriving society with, but to bring in rockets. It was a very bad idea. No, there was not starvation in Gaza after 2005. No, there was no deficit of goods coming in. I've been plenty of times.
There was no deficit?
No, there are plenty
No goods were kept out.
There are plenty. How many? Have you been to the crossing points?
No,
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
You've never been.
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? I've never been to. Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can.
Well, right.
But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point? Like,
No,
okay.
I find that
Lots
very...
of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so
if
I don't
you're
know
going
what
to
the...
spend a year and a half talking about a place, you should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
all right. I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't
but
think?
Okay. No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're an
Will you have to go and touch the ground? To
No,
be
I
able to
think
talk
you have
about
to
it?
see. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you
okay.
spend a career talking about something. Yes. I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
Okay.
It's
But
a
that's
sort
not
of normal it's a normal thing to do. You're talking about you're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. Again, I
How
think this
can
is a
you-
non-argument.
Hang
I
on.
don't
No,
understand.
No, it's not a non-argument.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a non-argument if you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, about the provisions going into Gaza or not, if you've never seen any of this going on.
So you're not
That's
allowed to
amazing
speak
to
about
me.
things that you've read about. You can only speak about things that you've seen with your own eyes.
You can talk about what you want, as you're proving. But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit, whilst developing all of these views about it. I mean, now I slightly get an idea of where you're coming from. You've read about this blockade, and so you imagine that that's what it is. I imagine you've read all the people who say that Gaza was a concentration camp, and you probably think that too. Am I right?
I mean, again, literally a concentration camp. It shares a lot of similarities, I would think.
Wow. Well, as I say, you can't time travel
Let's go
back to the
back to
Nazi
the
era.
let's
but
go
you
back to
could
the
go
blockade.
to the Middle
Okay.
East and actually visit it.
Okay,
It's
the
not hard to
World
do.
Bank said in 1996 for the
Now
one
the
year of the
libertarians
blockade.
are quoting the World Bank. I love it.
It doesn't mean anything. This is a non-argument. Yes, I'm saying the World Bank did their own analysis of this, and they said that it was a 40%
you do
of
your
the,
own analysis?
Hold on. You got to
Jesus,
stop interrupting
Okay.
and let him finish
I
the
will.
sentence.
the
Fire
World
away.
Bank said that 40% drop in the GDP of 1 year due to the blockade. And there's been a blockade from 2007 on. So are you saying that this hasn't had an economic effect? Is that the argument?
No, of course it'll have an economic effect.
So you're saying you have to be on the ground and do an audit of the blockade
No, no.
in order to be able to
I
comment
think
on
you
it?
should.
My bad. The clip kind of cuts here, folks, and acts a little weird, but we'll continue from this point. I'm not sure exactly what was happening.
They shouldn't have invaded their neighbor, and they shouldn't have tried to genocide their neighbor. Now, if the war can be prosecuted, could be prosecuted, it was always for two reasons. Always for two reasons. The first one, as stated by the unanimity of Israeli politicians and others, was to retrieve the hostages, who we also haven't spoken about, but there are still hostages in Gaza held for the last 18 months by Hamas, including young Eden Alexander from New Jersey. If Hamas had not stolen the hostages and hidden them in their tunnels and hidden them in civilian homes, this war would have all been different. If they had have given them back, and they could give them back tomorrow, it would all be different. But they didn't. They decided to do what they did on the 7th and to hold on to the 250-odd hostages as it was at the beginning, from the beginning. The second reason why the war is still being prosecuted is because of the stated aim to destroy Hamas, which is the stated aim of the Israelis. Neither of these things is remotely easy. Okay? And just from a point of humility, I think, on everyone's side, we should concede none of that is easy. It is not easy to get 250 hostages back when they have been distributed across the Gaza to civilian homes, hidden in tunnels, surrounded by munitions and much more. Hamas is not an actor like Denmark. Its backers don't behave the way that our governments do in the West. They have a totally different time scale that they think along. They have a totally different scale of values as well. The taunts of Hezbollah's leadership, of Hamas's leadership, of their backers in Tehran are annihilationist to their core. But at any point in the last 18 months, the Qataris, for instance, or the Iranians, the Iranian Revolutionary Government, or the Turkish government or others, could have put their pressure on Hamas to return the hostages who are still being held in captivity, and everything would be different. Secondly, as you know, I'm sure, you don't have to have seen this with your own eyes to know it. As I'm sure you know, the way in which Hamas built up the structure of the Gaza throughout the 18 years that they had was precisely to flout and use every law of war against the Israelis. Every army in a conflict has certain rules of war that you're meant to abide by. One of the most obvious is that you are identified as being a combatant, not as a civilian. Okay? Another is you don't put weapons in civilian houses and civilian buildings. You do not fire from houses of worship, rockets. You do not launch attacks from hospitals. You do not keep detention facilities where you can torture and disappear people inside hospitals and other medical facilities. All of these laws of war are the laws that Hamas breaks every minute of every day by their actions. So if you want to get the hostages back, and if you want to destroy Hamas, when you're fighting against a force which does not only not follow the rules of war, but uses your following of the rules of the laws of war against you, at least concede this is a highly specific and complex military operation. And if you have, or anyone else has, and I say this genuinely, a better way to get back the hostages and to destroy Hamas, I at any rate am all ears. I am so startled by the post-October the 7th world, not just in Israel and Gaza and everywhere where I've spent most of the last 18 months, but in what's happening here in the United States of America. It blows my mind, much of the response here, and the desire to leap over the first victims of this and go on to all of the proximate causes, theoretical causes, what-ifs, and so on. I was, as I described in the opening of this book, I was in New York on the 7th of October, and I woke up and started seeing what was happening and discovered that later that day already there were plans to organize a protest in Times Square. And what was the protest in Times Square? Massive protest in support of Hamas, as the massacre was still going on. And one of the things I just cannot get out of my head is, why in the last 18 months, when Hamas did what they did, have so many people made excuses for them, or decided to side with them, or deny their actions, or excuse their actions?
Why do you think that is?
Several very, very big things. One is, I think people wanted to ignore the nature of the atrocity because it was so appalling that it went against much of their narrative. I was at a reunion of one of the survivors of the Nova Party on one occasion, and he said to me, "What would you do if this had happened in your country?" And I thought, well, it hasn't happened at this scale, but something like it has happened. The Ariana Grande arena bombing in Manchester in 2017, the Bataclan massacre in Paris in 2015, the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2015. But all of these occasions when young people were murdered for being at a pop concert or a nightclub, the world's attention, the world's empathy, the world's sympathy went to the victims. Only in the case of the young Israelis dancing in the early hours of the morning on October the 7th, 2023, do the victims become victimized again and not believed. The era we lived through in the late 2010s was the era of believable women. And of all the Israeli women who were raped that morning, much of the international community does not want to listen to them at all, and certainly doesn't want to believe them. And there are many reasons. One, at the most fundamental level, is that I think a part of a generation that's coming up has been told there is something especially wicked about Israel, that there is something especially wicked about Israel's existence and its actions and its people, and it means that when their people are burned alive in their homes or raped at a music festival and shot in the head, they are uniquely undeserving of sympathy. And I think that people have been indoctrinated by very bad actors into this, and as a result have excused atrocities or will make excuses for them, make excuses for the people who do them. I think, in addition, it plays to some of the darkest things of the regional mind as well as the international mind. The aims of Hamas, their stated aims, include the annihilation of the Jewish people. And October the 7th, they had their best go at doing that. And the fact that in a decision between whether or not you're on the side of the people who want to dance and live in peace with their neighbors, or whether you're on the side of the people who want to rampage through a dance party bar in the early morning, macheteing at people, I find it amazing that there are so many people who don't know which side they're on. But there are a lot of them. There are a lot of reasons for that. But one of the foremost reasons is the fact that the state of Israel has been uniquely libeled, has been uniquely lied about. Its history has been uniquely lied about. It has been uniquely put under an international spotlight and then misrepresented in a way which I cannot think of many other countries in the world that have been treated that way. And there are deep reasons for it and shallow reasons for it. The deep reasons include some of the most ancient bigotries of the human heart, and the shallow reasons are people who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
My response to this is going to come in two parts. One, I want to start by first talking specifically about Dave Smith. I find it, like Douglas Murray, quite appalling, the fact that he has never traveled to Israel before, or to Palestine, whatever the hell you want to call it. The man, as being an expert on the topic as he is, he would literally be praised a hero if he were to step foot in Ramallah and Nablus. If he were to go to any of these places, he would get a red carpet rolled out for him by the Palestinians. He wouldn't be killed for the propaganda that he promotes about Palestine, about the Palestinian people. He would literally be praised as a hero. So I don't think it is an excuse. I think Joe kind of jumped in there to defend it, but I 100% would have doubled down on that if I was Douglas Murray and said, it is not an excuse for you to take the stances that you've taken and not travel to this place. As an American Jew, which I believe Dave Smith is, he has every single possibility to go and travel to Israel and see the apartheid, see the genocide of Israeli Arabs, right? The apartheid and ethnic cleansing of the Israeli Arabs, who are 2 million in number in our country. And then he could literally cross the border and go to anywhere in the West Bank and be hailed as a hero. He could have gotten the connections. He could have seen everything. He could have seen even the positive claims that the Palestinian side has about how their life is difficult. He could have seen it all. But he chose not to. He's taking an active step to choose not to go. Probably, I would say, because he's too scared. He's too scared he'll have to deal with the truth, and it's easier for him to sit in America and pretend like he knows everything rather than actually go there. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is you can see especially in the early parts of this interview, the attempts to dance around Douglas Murray's very real perspective on what's going on because of the place that he's been to, because he's seen it with his own eyes and he understands very well what is the truth of this region. When you have a lack of knowledge on a subject, people ask me all the time, where do you get the confidence to speak the way that you speak? Where do you have the confidence to speak about Israel, Palestine the way that you do? It's because I did the homework. Like Douglas Murray, if you were to put me in front of a Dave Smith, if you were to put me in front of a Joe Rogan, I might be nervous because of the stakes of the situation, but let me tell you guys something. Recently, I was invited to a very high-level meeting with people who are, I don't want to drop names, but massive people who rub shoulders with the biggest people in this space. And yes, I was nervous going in, but if you ask anybody in that room the way that I presented myself and my talking points, I held my own. And what's the reason I held my own? Even though I have a quarter of the followers and a quarter of the influence and no money compared to these very strong, powerful people, it's because I did my shit. I did my work. Every single talking point that I have comes from a place of massive knowledge. Comes from a place of physically traveling to Nablus and to Ramallah and sitting with Hamas members in the West Bank and going and seeing these things with my own eyes. And then I lived for 1.5 years under war in Israel. I've had rockets fired at me. I collected rocket shrapnel. I've been underground to the archaeological sites. Don't believe me? The entire catalog is on YouTube for you to watch for free. And Douglas has experienced way more than me in that aspect. He's been and talked to, and he's done his homework. But that's where the confidence comes from. When you actually do the work, and then you have grifters like Jackson Hinkle and Greg Stoker, and all these fucking liars online who pretend to understand the region without ever having stepped foot in it or understand the nuance of it, it gives you so much more confidence and emboldens you so much more as somebody who has done the work to be able to attack all of their positions. So I saw very early on in this talk, in this debate, that you can see Dave Smith lacks, one, the confidence, and two, the physical knowledge. You don't have to be somewhere to talk on it, but you probably should, especially if you have every single possibility to go there. Like, I don't talk about Ukraine. One, I'm not very interested in what's going on there. Two, I don't know enough. Three, I've never been. I've been to Russia. I spent quite a bit of time in Russia, but I've never been to Ukraine. So I don't feel comfortable talking or giving an opinion on it, especially when it's a real matter to many, many people. But Israel, Palestine, for some reason, everybody and their mother has to give an opinion, regardless of if they've ever been or ever intend on going. And that's the one thing that really drives me crazy. It drives me up a wall with this conflict. Because it's the one conflict where you don't have to have even a semblance of knowledge. You don't have to know anybody from there. You don't have to do any homework. You just get to have an opinion, and the world gets to accept your opinion. It's pretty absurd. Regardless of it, I think Douglas Murray made an incredible performance during this debate. And I'm excited to watch the entire thing in its entirety because I haven't had a chance. I'm traveling right now and I'm speaking across the U.S. So I'm definitely going to be listening to it on my next flight. But I appreciate you guys all supporting and watching. This will be my last video I post before Passover comes in, most likely. So happy Passover to everybody who's celebrating Chag Sameach, to the Christians, happy Lent, to the Muslims, Eid Mubarak. I think it's still Eid, maybe, after Ramadan. I'm not sure. It's a crossover of all the holidays right now. And we're going to take a small break on the channel for a couple days during Passover because me and my team, we don't post during holidays usually. So we'll see you guys in the next one. I love you long time. Thanks so much for supporting my channel. And we'll see you. Bye.
If you believe in my content and want to support me, just know your help is needed. There's a bunch of great ways to support me, being PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or joining my Patreon community down below. Patreon is the best way to support my channel, and you'll get a bunch of cool perks depending on what tier you join. Another great way to support me is by buying my merchandise on thetravelingclat.com. I regularly drop new merch designs like this beautiful hat, or this amazing shirt, where you can support the channel and get something cool for yourself. I also have an amazing Discord community with people from all over the world. Thank you so much for your support.